everybody. Welcome to our premiere episode of, I haven't even thought of a title for this episode yet, but I'm thinking it'll be something like One Question. I'm going to ask my guest, my very first guest, Kathleen Rodgers, one question as an author and one question as her character. And we will see how this goes. This is, again, my very first episode, and we're completely winging this. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Kathleen Rodgers. She's a very good friend of mine. We met probably 5 or 6 years ago through Ozark Writers League. She was going to be one of the guest speakers there. And is that right, Kathleen? I've got a terrible memory. I think Kathleen's memory is better than mine. We may have actually met before that. Is that right?
We've known each other 7 or 8 years in person.
7 or 8 years. See, I'm getting old. Anyway, let me introduce you to Kathleen. Kathleen was born and raised in Clovis, New Mexico. She's a novelist whose stories and essays have been in Family Circle magazine and Military Times. 3 of her aviation poems from the book Because I Fly were featured in an exhibit at the Cradle of Aviation Museum in Long Island. She was recently awarded the MWSA Founders Award and is a 2020 MWSA Writer of the Year finalist. And I just finished reading her 4th novel.
Yes.
Is that correct? The Flying Cutterbucks, which I absolutely loved. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight and just a little bit about Kathleen and her writing life. And hopefully we will learn about what I call the merging of her real life with her character's life. And everything I'm going to ask Kathleen tonight is completely spontaneous. She doesn't have any heads up on what I'm going to be asking her. So hopefully we'll have some fun. So Kathleen, I really enjoyed your book.
Thank you so much, Jan.
I related to so much of it because the characters were about our age, and some of the reflections and the memories from the character reminded me a lot of my teenage years. Some of the music that you talked about reminded me, I still remember the album cover that you mentioned, the Herb Alpert whipped cream, which I'm sure a lot of you listeners out there remember, the whipped cream picture, and some of the music. It just is of that era. How did you happen to choose that, Kathleen?
I was writing along in several chapters. I believe it's a chapter where my protagonist, Trudy, is going through old photos with her mother, and there's a big yellow dog. And I needed to jazz up the scene, and music from The Dating Game came through my mind, and all those Herb Alpert classics, and oh my gosh, I had so much fun. So I listened to the CD. My husband ordered it for me. I listened to all that whole music the rest of the novel.
So did you grow up with that music?
Yes, and at some point my uncle had the iconic cover with that very beautiful brunette, you know, in the mountain of whipped cream, and it was so scandalous at the time.
It was.
Now it's pretty mild.
Right.
But I had fun with that. I had fun with that music, and it really helped me get in the moment.
Okay, well, I'm going to first ask you to give us an elevator pitch of the Flying Cutterbucks. I know that's probably something that you have practiced over and over as you were trying to find a publisher, so let me let you share your elevator pitch about the book.
Okay, if I were getting on an elevator and we're at a conference and, you know, you're a gatekeeper and I'm trying to sell my book, you know, it is a serving of fried green tomatoes pitched against the pitched against the Me Too, She Persist generation. It's the story of a Gold Star family of strong women, and they have a secret from something that happened in the 70s. And the patriarch is a United States Air Force fighter pilot, Shep Cutterbuck, and he's missing in action in Vietnam.
Okay.
And Trudy returns home after 40 years. She was a flight attendant for Southwest Airlines.
Mhm.
And she returns to her home in Pardon, New Mexico, to the house where her mother, Jewel, lives. And Jewel has a sister named Aunt Star. She's an old activist, retired nurse. She lives in another town in New Mexico. And Trudy has a sister named Georgia, who's 2 years younger. And so what I did is I set the story into the middle of everything happening in the election 2016 up through on the eve of 2020.
Okay. Yeah. They say that historical fiction is, I think they usually say at least 50 years old, but to me, this was kind of a historical fiction because even though it's present day, you had a lot of historical events in the book, which I really liked. And I really liked that you had it take place in New Mexico also because I love New Mexico. And forgive my ignorance, but is Pardon a fictitious town?
You won't find it on a map.
But is it a real town?
Pardon is, it's inspired by places in eastern New Mexico.
Okay.
Now there's another town mentioned in the novel, Las Vegas, New Mexico. It is a real town, an historic little town up in northern New Mexico.
Okay. So Pardon must be like a compilation of several small towns.
Yes, I would safely say yes.
Okay. Did it have some components of Clovis?
Possibly the grid. When I write, if I can picture like the grid of a map or how a town is laid out or even one section, then that helps me frame my story people around, even though I change the names most of the time. Now,
Okay.
for the Las Vegas chapters, I didn't. And there's some Castaneda Hotel, the Plaza Hotel, the historic Plaza. Those are all real places that I used in my fictitious setting.
Okay. Well, I could probably spend the whole evening asking you about how you developed your characters and who inspired your characters. But I've got a couple of questions based on this big secret, and I'm glad you used the word secret in your elevator pitch because to me that obviously was one of the drivers in your story was the secret. And I had a couple of questions about the secret. One is, I don't know if I want to ask you this as a real life person or if I want to ask you this as Trudy, the main character. So I'll give you the choice of how to answer it. And the answer may be the same for both your character and you. But do you think it's okay for people to have secrets?
I think people keep secrets for many reasons. Secrets can be kept to protect others. Secrets can be kept to protect ourselves. Sometimes secrets can be kept because there's shame, or there could be the law involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think every family, I don't care where we all come from, every family has family secrets. Some things are swept under the rug. Some things need to be aired out. It just depends on each family and how the secrets are kept and why. Every case is different.
And so do you think it's okay to keep a secret? I mean, do you think, I guess one of the questions I had written down is, do you or does Trudy, I got the feeling that Trudy did feel that a secret is like a lie because she held it in and she felt this need to get it out.
Trudy couldn't remember everything that happened in a tragic moment in 1974. She needed Aunt Star, who's 81 in the present timeline. She needed Aunt Star and she needed her little sister Georgia, who's 2 years younger, to help her unlock what happened. And their mother Jewel wasn't there at the time. And so she butts heads with Aunt Star. Now, Aunt Star's the caretaker of them all. And out of all my characters, even though she wasn't my protagonist, she's my favorite character. She's an old activist.
Mm-hmm.
And but Trudy is trying to figure out what really happened. because Trudy is coming up on 58 when the story opens. She's at that time in her life, and she's returned home. And because of the political things happening in the country, it triggers the memory. There was something in real life that happened on October 7th, 2016, and everybody in the whole world knows about it. It was all over the news. A certain person said something, and that something that this certain man said triggers Trudy and the memory.
And is that certain thing that certain man said on October 7th, was that the spark that started this book?
It was the spark that set me on fire to get off my duff. I had, in early 2017, in real time, I just signed with my new agent, Diane Nine. When I sent the proposal in based on a 1-paragraph premise, all she knew then was the story of these women. And I signed a contract with her. She agreed to represent me. And when we had our first phone chat, I said, okay, well, here's what I really want to do. And I was nervous to ask her, this is what I want to try to bring into my fiction. And she said, go for it. And that is what drove me to stay with the story, despite all the chaos, despite the changing news cycle, despite everything happening every day. It drove me. And there were certain things that were said in the summer of 2016 in real time that drove me, that just, as a military wife, military mama, of course, I'm an older military wife now, my husband's retired, but I have a son that's gone to war. He's deployed twice. There are certain things that were said. I have many Gold Star friends, certain things that were said by someone, and they just got inside of me, and I could not let them go. And so I gave them to my characters, and I worked out all my anger issues and feeling betrayal through my characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought you struck a really, really good balance between, especially with all the passion that so many of us feel with this man and some of these events. I thought you struck a really good balance without not going with drawing it into the story and making it a part of the story without going overboard and spending too much time on it. I thought that was really good. And I think especially as a piece of fiction to be looked at, 10 or 20 years from now, there's enough in there that will help whoever is reading it recollect the era without just pounding someone's head with it. So I thought you did really well with that.
Thank you. It was, I really tried to keep some things balanced.
Yeah. How much of the story did you know at the start, and how much of it was told to you by your characters as you were writing?
I pretty much only had the setting. I didn't even know really that Trudy was Trudy. I didn't really know any of the names. I didn't know any of that. I just sort of knew I wanted to write a story set in eastern New Mexico. I wanted to give eastern New Mexico its due because I'm from there. So much of the time when people think of New Mexico, they think of Albuquerque, Taos, Santa Fe. And there's like this whole other half of the state. Mm-hmm. And so that was fun. I think I told you the story one time when I was trying to figure out what the story is, what is the framework. And I started talking to a former character who was the star, the protagonist of 2 of my novels. Her name is Johnny Kitchen. Mm-hmm. She has nothing to do with this novel, but she was such a part of me. She became real to me. And so one day I was driving down the street, just like, oh my gosh, how am I going to find Trudy's voice? Mm-hmm. Who is Trudy? And I said, Johnny, I know that, can you help me find Trudy? You don't get to live again in this story, but can you help me find Trudy? And the minute I asked Johnny to help me find Trudy, the floodgates open. I've got goosebumps now telling you.
Yeah.
It's interesting to rely on one of your characters to help you in a book that she's not even going to get to walk into.
Yeah. How long ago did you finish your book, your Johnny book?
Oh my goodness. Johnny Come Lately originally came out 2015, and in 2018, Thorndike Press, the leading large print publisher for library editions, they republished it. So, and then the sequel, which can be read as a standalone, is Seven Wings to Glory. It came out 2017, got picked up by Thorndike Press. Both Johnny Come Lately, Seven Wings to Glory came out in the hardcover large print library edition in spring of 2018, and those books are in libraries across the United States, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia.
Wow, that's great. But I remember when we had that conversation about letting go of your character that you'd worked on for over a period of how many years? How
Oh
many
my
years?
goodness. I started Johnny Come Lately in 2007 while I was, before my first novel, The Final Salute, came out in 2008. I kept promoting The Final Salute, was playing at Johnny Come Lately, and one day in about 2012, Tom came home, you know, he was still flying for the airlines. I'm sitting at the kitchen table promoting the first novel that had been out. He walked in his airline uniform. I'm probably whining that I need to get going on the new book, and he stopped and looked at me and said, Kathy, I want to see Johnny Come Lately published before I die. And I
Aww.
set up, and I'm like, okay. I can't explain what that did to me, but it's like, oh my God, am I a promoter or am I a writer?
Yeah.
I'm a writer.
Yeah.
And now I'm in the promo stage of promoting the Flying Cutterbucks. But at some point, you know, that new work in progress, it will nag, it will wake me up, and then I'll worry that next book into being. That's how I write. I worry all my stories into being.
That's a really hard balance to find between promoting a book. I mean, that's really your baby of the time, promoting that book and getting started on your next one. I mean, I remember that with the Red Kimono, and that came out in 2013. And not that I'm promoting the Red Kimono anymore, but I'm still, well, I'm kind of half cheating, half lying when I say I'm still working on the sequel, because I haven't been very good at working on the sequel. But
the Red Kimono, right there where my
it is,
finger
right there.
I believe that's the hardback edition of the Red Kimono, published by University of Arkansas Press in 2013, and you won several big awards.
Well, a few little awards.
I think the Historical Novel Society, didn't you win an award from them?
It was an editor's choice. Okay, stop. We're here to promote you. Kathleen is one of the very best at promoting authors, I have to say. I think it's just great. I don't even know how you find the time to do that and promote your own books and do writing. You're on your 5th novel now. But I've got one more question, and this is one that could probably get into a lot of detail, and it just came up tonight while Steve and I were having dinner. I was talking to him about the interview and some of the questions I was going to be asking you, and I told him a little bit about the book and what it was about, and you know, how the secret drives the story. And he talked about how you know, Steve is a licensed clinical social worker, so he looks at things you know, kind of from a therapist's point of view. And he was thinking that the secret was kept due to shame. But I explained some other things too, which I won't go into too much detail about the book because I don't want to ruin anything. But he asked a really interesting question: if the story would have been any different if Trudy had been a man, because he feels that women carry so much more guilt and shame about things than women do, or than men do. And I thought that was a really interesting question.
Wow. Ooh, that puts a whole spin, like, oh my gosh, somebody needs to write that book.
Right. That's a whole different what if story. But I'm guessing the story would be completely different. In fact, I think what I told Steve is there may not have been a book if it had been a man, because a man would have just thought, I did what I needed to do.
Steve hit up on something. it could have still been covered up. There still could have been the secret. If it would have happened to, say, a teenage boy, there was shame. And then the men might have covered it up, or some bullying. No telling. It could go all kinds of directions.
Yeah, it could. I just thought it was an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us very quickly the book you're working on now, and that'll give us something to look forward to.
Okay, I don't want to give away my working title, but it's once again set in eastern New Mexico. It's a story that moves back and forth between past and present, between 2017 to the 60s and the 70s, and it's about 3 sisters and 2 best friends, and they form a secret club. And when you live in eastern New Mexico and you come from, you know, families without means, without a lot of money, what's the one commodity in an arid landscape that costs money to have? Water. So if you're these 5 little girls and they aren't members of the country club, nobody's got a big swimming pool in their backyard, they are always thirsty for water. And let's just say, you know, opportunity is about as rare as mermaid sightings in eastern New Mexico.
Very interesting.
And my main character's name is Marigold Hubbard, and she is a former journalist and a ghostwriter, and she returns to Sand Hill, New Mexico, in search of some things that she is again searching for, something that happened in the past, and it involved a death of someone she was very close to.
Very interesting. I can't wait to read that one. I know we've talked about it quite a bit in the past, and it sounds like another fascinating story. And I love, another thing that I related to in Flying Cutterbucks was the relationship between the sisters. So I like that this new book, and it's completely unrelated, right? The characters are completely.
Totally, yeah. All the 5 girls, starting with the 3 sisters, Clover, Marigold, and Tansy, and the 2 best friends are Ruthie and Melody.
Aw. Yeah, that to me sounds like an Oprah movie.
Oh, I hope so. Can I read a quote that helped me throughout the writing of the Flying Cutterbucks? I posted it on Facebook again the other day. Oh my gosh, Jan, I must have gotten 10 shares, and we got permission to use this, but it's Toni Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
And she passed in 2019. This quote opens up the Flying Cutterbucks. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. And that was a quote that Toni Morrison wrote. It's from an article she penned called No Place for Self-Pity, No Room for Fear, and it was published in The Nation, March 23rd, 2015.
I love that quote. You know, it takes a lot of courage to speak the truth that needs to be spoken. And that's another thing that I really admire about you. And to our audience out there, I was going to try to share a picture with you, but I'm afraid I would mess up the recording if I do that. But I'm going to be posting it on my blog. I've got Kathleen shared. In fact, I think it's the same picture that you put the quote on Facebook, isn't it?
Actually, the quote I put on Facebook is Toni Morrison's.
Oh, okay.
But the other day I posted an old photo of me as a cub reporter at about 19 or 20 years old with similar like that. Like back then, you know, I was a cub reporter and I didn't quite know, you know, I wanted to be a writer. But even though I don't have my youth anymore, and it's a fun picture, people will see,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm posing in the newsroom, goofing off. But what I think I had said is the difference between my younger self and me now is this: I have a voice. I found my voice as a writer and an activist, and I use it in my stories.
And I think that's great. And that's why you're an inspiration to me, because I'm not quite there yet. I still find myself having writer's block because I worry about what someone's going to think about my thoughts on something. So,
Well, and there are sometimes repercussions, and you might hear from certain people. But if writers don't speak and write their truth, even if they take something and they write it into their story, then why be a writer? I mean, there's all kinds of writing, don't get me wrong, all kinds of novels out there. But someone like me, if someone told me to sit down and write a story that really didn't have any meaning to me and just plot this story and here's the things you have to follow, I would rather, close up shop and go do something else. But it has to be something that matters to me. It could be social issues. It could be something out there that's harming others, social injustice, social unrest, family.
mm-hmm.
I do write about war, and all 4 of my novels to date have something to do with the collateral damage of war. All 4 of the novels have some military aspect, but I want my readers to know you don't have to know anything about the military. I don't write heavy military action thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the new novel I'm working on, so far I don't have any.
Oh, really? Well, that's different for you.
I kind of want to try something very different. So it would be strictly what I would call women's fiction, which all my novels, the last 3 have been categorized as women's fiction. But I have a lot of male readers read.
Well, yeah, because the issues are women's issues.
And all of them have a contemporary setting, even if certain things maybe took place in the 60s or 70s. But I don't write anything past like the 60s, like beyond, or 40s, 30s, 40s. I have never written a true historical novel, but I admire my writer friends who do.
Well, again, by definition, I guess yours wasn't historical, but it definitely had some current day historical references in it. So
yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I just say bravo to you for your honesty and your ability to speak truth. So you stay at it and keep inspiring the rest of us.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you for reading The Flying Cutterbucks. Thank you for being my friend, for your support.
I highly recommend the book, and I'll be doing a review on Amazon.
Oh, that's just wonderful. And my publisher, Wyatt McKenzie, is a women-owned progressive publisher based in Oregon. She'll be so happy. And Diane Nine, my agent, is based in Washington, D.C. In the thick of it.
Yep. Well, congratulations. And I enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully people out there listening learned something. Hopefully you will be going out to get the book, because again, I highly recommend it. And Kathleen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan.
Bye, everybody.